Welcome back to Trading 360. I'm Diane King Hall. Time now for the big three stocks, three charts, three trades. Rick Ducat will take us through the charts. So here to take us through the trades on her list, we've got Jessica Inskip, stockbrokers.com. It is great to see both of you. Jessica, always love to hear your insight. Before we get to the tickers on your list, I want to get your big picture take on the market action this week.
Absolutely. We've been talking about the ceiling of uncertainty. There are cracks in that now that we have some certainty in the form of a trade deal. We do want to look at the details, though, before we count this as a win. Was it a part of market stability in between China and the US? We've got to focus on the 10-year. We've got to look at their currencies. So that's something that I definitely want to pay attention to. However, the markets are reacting very positively. We have reached my resistance point. So I want to see a weekly close above the 13 weekly moving average before I say this rally really has legs. However, it looks bright so far. Good CPI number, so lots to pay attention to.
Yeah, it was a good CPI number today. All right, so tell us about the first ticker on your list. You've got IBM on your radar. It is outperforming the S&P 500 year to date. What's your view here?
Absolutely. I've talked about IBM a few times in the past, and I do think it's a defensive tech leader, and it's multifaceted. First and foremost, before we had all this tariff uncertainty come into the market, at the end of last year, my big market thesis was the year of AI agents when we were focusing on AI. And IBM is absolutely in the forefront of that. They're driving enterprise AI partnerships. If you pull the headlines purely for IBM, you'll see collaboration after collaboration. Of note is Oracle and Lumen. That's expanding those enterprise productivity and efficiency. We want to see enterprise solutions. On top of that, because there's improving revenue growth, that's driving higher cash flow. When there's higher cash flow, that means there's the ability to have more M&A, which could contribute to the longer term expansion. So that could be defensive with growth potential because of that cash flow, something we certainly want to see. And additionally, back in even my trading desk days, and I was at a conference and spoke to a lot of people, we traded off of mainframe systems when you had to do those really complicated trades, and they still exist today. And those are built by IBM. And there's a new mainframe infrastructure that's actually set to launch in June, which could certainly translate positively into earnings as those enterprises need to update those systems. And last and certainly not least, because of the pick that we have, Paul Adkins, for the head of the SEC under Trump, I think there's going to be a focus on digital currency. And I want to choose companies that focus on bringing that to life. And IBM has some potential blockchain exposure that I think will be positive to keep that catalyst and those potential earnings going higher.
All right, Rick, so take us through what you're paying attention to when it comes to the chart for Big Blue.
There's a few things that stand out about this chart right away. The first is that we've had a pretty strong rally that began at those lows, 163.53. We're up like 57% from that point. But the other thing is that this stock, unlike many of its peers in the tech sector, held on much better to these gains during our tariff news-related turbulence that we saw right here. Notice that this was when all the tariff stuff started coming out, and then we held on low, high, low right here. This green line, 215, happened to line up with our purple 252-day exponential moving average. So we held on to the previous lows. We didn't really even make too much of a foray below them at all. So significant support near 215 at that point. Now we've crossed above our moving averages, yellow 21-day and orange 63-day exponential moving averages. There's a pretty clear mark to beat here, this triple top type ceiling near 266. Momentum continues to improve. We're hanging on above the 50 midline, making a very slight new relative high and sticking to our green trend line. So if we were to look at our standard deviation channels and volume profile studies, we can see here that price is pushing above a volume node. That lines up with this series of old lows and subsequent highs near 250. So that seems like an important supportive area. And then another volume node near those highs near about 264. So some pretty clear boundaries to keep an eye on here.
All right, some clear boundaries to keep an eye on. Jessica, any final thoughts on IBM before we move on to the next ticker on your list?
Yeah, I think we're still focusing on AI agents, and we're still in those early stages of AI, and IBM, I believe, will be a beneficiary of that.
All right, let's talk about the next one on your list. We're moving on to financials from the tech sector. BLK, Blackrock's on your list. It's been a little soft year to date, but it is up year over year. What's your view here?
Yeah, so this one is also multifaceted. First and foremost, we have changing market dynamics with the increase of participation of the retail investor. Because of the uncertainty, the retail investor is putting cash on the sidelines or they'll move into bond funds. And then there's more participation that's this passive investor. Of all three of those scenarios, BlackRock has a product, which means they're a beneficiary of that type of market rotation, which means this buying the dip mentality that's coming in from the retail space is good for BlackRock. On top of that, going back to the pick for the SEC, BlackRock, Larry Fink, it believes in revolutionizing financial ownership and investing and making assets more accessible and efficient through tokenization and that digitalization. So therefore, I think they'll be in the forefront of that, shaping the next era of finance, something that I certainly want to watch. There are some headwinds there. However, there will be involvement with BlackRock. And then the third approach that I really like about BlackRock would be just the access to M&A that they have and even private credit. There's a lot of investing within infrastructure, and we know that that's a big theme this year. So I think there's a lot of beneficiaries that could pay out positively to BlackRock.
All right, all right. So, Rick, take us through what you're paying attention to when it comes to the chart for BlackRock, especially in the context of its performance. It's a different performance when we look at it this year versus year over year. What are you seeing?
Yeah, and it's different year over year, but it's much more typical, I would say, of the broader market. Our last chart was kind of an outlier. This one has the similar trajectory we've seen across the board pretty much. A long rally here that culminated in highs here, 1084, and then a decline that had a pretty serious drop off here around the tariff news incidents that we saw. So now, though, prices mostly recovered. We're still a little bit short of this double top type price area near 980, and it looks like perhaps we're in jeopardy of losing this rather short-term white trend line. But for now, we're hanging on right on the money for that particular line. We can see that we had our moving averages clustering together, moving more sideways. Typically, that speaks to a lack of strong directionality. In this case, we had range-bound price activity followed by a V-shaped reversal here, so not really much of an opportunity for price to find a clear direction here. But for now, it looks like the slope is starting to shift back to the upside here as price continues to rally. RSI, once again, above the 50 midline and above its trend line. The bulls would want a push above the overbought area, which is 70. So now we can see here that we are very close to our volume profile point of control. 954, that's our heavy trading area. Could be a potential congestion point or a pivot point if we get a strong breakout. Quite a lot of potential support here. Our moving averages and our -1 standard deviation channel, perhaps around 920, 925. That would be a general area for those indicators. Volume picks up once again up here near 1030.
All right, so that chart more typical of the broader market patterns that we've seen on a year-over-year basis. All right, Jessica, any final thoughts on BlackRock before we move on to your final trade?
Yeah, I love the way that Rick uses RSI. I think it's misused so much, but if you look at the math of it, you want it to hang to that higher end because it takes a period from 0 to 100 anyways and normalizes it. So I think that's a good speak to the technical view that I feel on BlackRock.
Okay, so let's go to your final pick on your list or your final view on your list. You got Taiwan Semi on your list. It is higher today. What's your view here?
So again, AI, I think we're in those early revolutionary stages. The market likes to look at things quarterly and reprice and aggressively sells off the leaders, which was tech. So we're at that pivotal moment where tech could reaccelerate. But again, the broader market is at my resistance point, as is the tech sector. So I want to position this very specifically with the trade. The reason why I like Taiwan Semiconductor, right now there's an event in Saudi Arabia that's going through this future of innovation. It's very centralized around artificial intelligence and next generation. TSMC is very much a beneficiary of that, just as NVIDIA is. They're building chips that power AI. It's positioning itself for demand. It's expected to top over 1 trillion by 2030. And there are chips that are just boosting AI computing power more than 40 times in comparison to the other ones. And those are going to be ready for mass production by 2027. So the worry, of course, is pull forward demand, but there's constant innovating within this space that I think we can climb that wall of worry within the AI narrative. From a strategic standpoint, because it is hitting my area of resistance, I do like to deploy an option strategy to add this to my longer term portfolio. The way I do that is via a cash secured put. Essentially, essentially I'm creating an obligation to buy the stock at the strike price if it were to move down, but I'm capitalizing on implied volatility. So I'd be selling about a 45-day options expiration that's at the money. So it's choosing a strike price, which is my agreed upon price to buy at, very close to the market price. The premium that I receive is the max gain that I can achieve. Of course, you keep that if the security goes up beyond that strike that you choose. But if it were to move adversely, since I'm choosing something in comparison to the market right now, I capture that premium. I essentially have reduced my risk in comparison to buying the stock outright right now.
Okay, and you mentioned climbing that wall of worry. You can certainly see it when you look, especially if you look just from the beginning of last month to now, which is similar to, I guess, a lot of the momentum we're seeing in some of the tech sector. Rick, take us through what the chart looks like for Taiwan Semi.
Yeah, once again, a more kind of typical chart of what we've seen in the tech sector. The similarities were hitting these highs after a nice rally, then dropping off, a severe downfall during our tariff news hit, and then that took us below a significant support level of 168. So now, similar situation again, prices regrouping, taking out those old moving averages, which are clustered together. In this case, 172 is our notable support confluence there for all our moving averages. Still quite a bit away from 210. That's an area at which price had some significant closes here. Didn't spend too much time above it either, so that would be one area to watch. And to kind of continue our conversation about RSI here, we did just cross into that overbought area during this segment here as price rallied. So counterintuitive to the name, I think maybe that's why RSI can be misunderstood. Overbought is typically a sign of strength in a trending market, and it would be more of a sign of weakness in a range-bound market where prices reaching those highs and hitting the overbought level on the RSI. That would mean more it's like running out of steam at that point. Here we have a situation where RSI is making new relative highs, trending upward, and price is breaking out with a strong push to the upside here. So really it would be more like a sign of strength is typically how it would be interpreted here. So volume node here, once again, we're at our linear regression line, our fair value, our line of best fit. That's the solid blue line. So around 189 would be a noteworthy point to hold, and then perhaps these old highs here near 184. We've got everything coming together down here, our moving averages and our point of control near 174. To the upside, volume picks up again near like 205 or so.
All right, Jessica, I yield the floor to you. Any final thoughts on either Taiwan Semi or Blackrock or IBM?
Yeah, I just think we're still in those early stages of AI. It's something we can pay attention to. I love that we turned this segment into an educational technical indicator with RSI. That's really great points that you brought there, but a lot to pay attention to in the market. Really, it's the Fed and the 10-year when we've got a lot of debt that is maturing that I think is going to be our biggest headwind. So that's going to come around July. I want to make sure I say that.
Okay, all right. There's some things to pay attention to within the macro picture as well. That's Jessica Inskip, stockbrokers.com, Director of Investor Research over there, and Rick Ducat, who I like to call Duke of Data, lead market technician here on Schwab Network. Thanks, guys.